So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the valedictory session of the two-day national conference themed Xi Jinping's third term, Implications for Global Order and India. And we are honored to have with us Dr. L. Venkateshwaran, Director of the School of International Cooperation, Security and Strategic Languages, Rashtriya Raksha University. It is now my pleasure to invite Dr. L. Venkateshwaran to conclude the two-day national conference and deliver the vote of thanks. He'll be joining us virtually. Please, sir.
Good evening, everyone, and I begin on a lighter vein. I've been given the responsibility of summing up the exhaustive insights and extensive discussions by our very eminent experts who have been closely scrutinizing the various themes we've deliberated on over the last 2 days, and also propose a formal vote of thanks on behalf of all the organizers of this conference in about 10 minutes. I'm sure that you will empathize that this is as arduous a task as dealing with the China question itself. Fortunately, our senior partner, Commodore Vasan, has been kind enough to give me a little more time on a call this morning. So I feel much better, and thank you very much, sir. Having said that, I'll do my best to not stand too long, or rather sit too long between you and refreshments. We've all worked out the online situation, but somehow online refreshments have not been worked out yet. So for that, one had to be in Chennai, of course. I think everyone will agree that we have covered significant ground over the last 2 days of very intense deliberations and varied perspectives provided on the implications of Xi Jinping's third term on the global order, and more specifically for India. In summing up, I'd like to make about very quickly, or as precise as possible, 15 to 16 points, which I thought was key takeaways from the various sessions, and also take the liberty to add my observations for consideration as part of the existing discourse over the last 2 days. There was mention, of course, primarily from Jaidev Ranade sir in some of the opening sessions about the leadership and the weakening position. It is my sense that we are looking at Xi Jinping remaining in power for his lifetime. Unless, of course, there is a remarkable, unheard of challenge to uproot him as a paramount leader. He's about 70 years now, so we are looking at possibly another, definitely a good part of maybe over a decade, where he may continue to be the paramount leader. Hence, from an Indian perspective, we need to prepare to deal with this scenario. China with a plan and leader for the long term. Jaidev sir, of course, has immense experience and has spoken about possible challenges emerging for Xi Jinping in the near future. It is my sense that whatever chances are there for these challenges to emerge become significantly more difficult considering the planned and almost perfect ascent to power of the incumbent. He has been in power for almost 12 years now and has now got loyalists, or at least those who are not against him, in positions of power in the party, youth league, party school, the military and the intelligentsia, and the provincial and the central government. While he launched the anti-corruption campaign I believe, with the intention to root out corruption and make the system more robust, it was also a convenient platform to remove challenges to his leadership. Po Xilai, Shun Chenkai, Hu Chunwa are all such primary examples. I also believe that we should not look at Xi Jinping through the prism of a conventional dictator or someone who has centralized power immensely. I believe Xi is wedded much more to the cause, in the sense that he has literally grown up within the fundamental system under the party. Let's not forget, stability of the fundamental system under the party is China's core interest. He has grown up during the Mao years. His father was close to the leadership during the Tang years, and he himself, that is Xi Jinping, has held important positions at the provincial levels and the central government during the Jiang Zemin and the Hu Jintao years. Hence, again, it is my sense that remaining in power is important for him to realize his vision and strengthen the cause. But the commitment to the cause is most important for him, and remaining in power is vital in that context. Again, referring to Jaydev Ranade sir's observations about Xi's position being primarily challenged also internally, it is my sense that Xi's position has weakened more due to external factors rather than due to any internal challenges within the party, and whether it is coming from the military or the intelligentsia factions. There is no doubt that the wolf warrior diplomacy that was adopted by China in the last few years, and the assertiveness across multiple fronts, whether on the Indian side, whether towards Taiwan or the South China and the East China Sea, has considerably played into the hands of the US and the Western narrative that China's rise was never going to be peaceful. Hence, in this context, China's challenge to the existing global order has become more complicated, also due to the deepening Indo-US strategic relations, as highlighted by Dr. Sridhar Sir, in particular in the defense domain, through the signifying of the 4 foundational agreements, and in the economic domain, as elucidated by Shivaraman Sir. Case in point, their plans for the next generation high-tech domains, whether that is in robotics, AI, semiconductors, and this was a point that Jaydev Sir alluded to, has all been possibly pushed back or complicated. Further, his push in contradiction to former Premier Li Keqiang's position on the economy has also not succeeded. Amidst what we are seeing now is increasingly weakening economy. I sense that both of these indicators have caused Xi Jinping to reconsider, possibly worry, and it is my sense again that today he's more open to listening to his close, trusted confidants than he was possibly a few years earlier. This could have also led to the advice given to him by his close confidants might have led to the removal of the fast-rising foreign minister, Chen Gan. Let's not forget that he was one of the poster boys of the wolf warrior diplomacy, and also someone who represented China in the US. And hence, and on this I agree with Jaydev Sir, that the confrontation with the United States is not something that's going to be in the long term good for China. So in that sense, the removal of Chen Gang actually does allow for Xi Jinping to, at least indicate that there is a victim for all that's happened in the last few years. From an Indian perspective, I think we need to continue investing in engaging with those individuals who have the leaders here. I mean, this is something that we have attempted to do, but possibly not succeeded because of the opaque system that is there in China. On the military factor, which General Narayanan Sir, elucidated so significantly, I think this point about we must not overestimate nor underestimate China's capabilities, threats, and vulnerabilities. So it's always about trying to maintain that balance. When it comes to dealing with Pakistan, there is the emotional quotient of what has happened in our history with the partition. But when it comes to China, I think it has to be extremely pragmatic. General Narayanan has very succinctly analyzed China's evolution of military strategy across the 5 generations of leaders, including its adapting to the recent military reforms, dual-use infrastructure, the challenges of using overseas naval bases, and the time required for it to be seamlessly effective in operations. China's efforts to test India on the borders will continue. And on this point, of course, I agree with what General Narayanan says. And we need to closely track its initiatives abroad, even if it is in geographically far-flung areas. Hence, continuous scenario building and building appropriate response mechanism becomes very, very important. All of this, in some way or the other, is already it's already happening. On the maritime domain, General Shankar and Commodore Venugopal comprehensively outlined China's maritime assertiveness in the larger Indo-Pacific area and the growing presence in the Indian Ocean region in particular over the last decade and a half. It is my sense that considering the importance of the maritime domain for China to secure its energy and larger strategic interests, we should be preparing effective response mechanisms for a scenario where the vital slocks which straddles the Indian Ocean region is also included as a part of China's ever-evolving and broad core interests, which will mean that it will be more than willing to use force if a situation emerges in the region. On the neighborhood, China's growing strategic presence has been outlined in detail by Satyamurthy sir, Colonel Hariharan sir, Balasubramaniam, Chengappa sir, as well as Heblikar sir. Again, China's initiatives become a concern in our neighborhood in the context of our bilateral relations, given the difficult past thanks to the unresolved border dispute, where not only are we dealing with traditional challenges of transgressions and face-offs and whatnot, as Doklam and Galwan has highlighted, but also non-traditional challenges in the form of potential water wars, as detailed by Air Marshal Rana. The Tibet issue, complicated by the consistent Sinicization, border villages emerging, and the presence also of the Tibetan government in exile and His Holiness the Dalai Lama here in India, and which was outlined by, of course, Claude R.P. sir, and the growing China-Pakistan complementarity across different sectors, which was outlined by Bidhan the Chengappa sir. That's the reason why you've had a difficult past. The present is unequal in terms of power asymmetry, quite clearly in favor of China, and the future is possibly going to be hence competitive and maybe even conflictual. From another perspective, it could also be China's presence in the neighborhood could also be viewed as a natural expansion of a growing power's influence in its near and extended neighborhood. From an Indian perspective, it is my sense that efforts will not focus on, we should not focus our efforts on competing in playing China's own game in the neighborhood, but to focus on providing assistance and filling the vulnerable gaps created by China's initiatives in our neighborhood, even as people-centric initiatives are continued as before. A case in point is our financial assistance to Sri Lanka amidst its more recent economic challenges. We need to work with like-minded partners, whether that's the United States, whether it's European partners, Japan, Australia, some of the ASEAN countries that are involved in maritime disputes with China. And this was highlighted by Commodore Vasan sir in his presentation on regional groupings, whether that is in the form of the Quad, the IORA, IONS, or any other emerging alliances. On the information campaign, I think a significant point to closely track China's efforts to influence our political system. And this point was fairly well outlined in the discussion on the media landscape, which was chaired by Shashi Nair sir. This becomes extremely significant in the context of what General Narayanan highlighted as China's three warfare strategy, where information is an extremely important domain from its perspective. From my sense, the interaction which brought out two very interesting perspectives of dealing with China's influence operations are both correct. We need to closely track such attempts and counter the more dangerous initiatives, even as we don't have to react to every attempt, considering that our democracy has the strength to withstand due to its diversity. The strategic window of opportunity, as highlighted by General Narayanan sir, whether it is for the next 10 to 15 years, needs to be invested in developing significant indigenous high-tech capabilities, in particular in defense, cyber, and space domains. We will need this time to develop adequate capabilities, and we have already made that beginning. I think it was Arun Mampasi who actually highlighted about statements of developing advanced capabilities in a year or two. And I think we should not take these, we should take these statements more as signaling or posturing. I agree that our demographic potential and dividend must be fully utilized, as highlighted by Dominic Karunesudas, to enhance our cyber offensive and defensive capabilities, deterrence capabilities. Commodore Wasson is absolutely right in emphasizing on developing in the concluding sessions on our options in developing comprehensive national power. Uh, this is very important for us, even as we manage differences with China and attempt to maintain peace and tranquility along the border. All the efforts that's currently happening at the at the military and diplomatic level talks that's taking place is towards this objective. Again, a number of speakers mentioned, and General Karambir also mentioned this right before I spoke, a whole of nation approach is very important towards, especially when it comes to dealing with China, because we are dealing with a system, a highly centralized system that moves as one. Just to conclude, before I come to a final vote of thanks, General Narayanan in his concluding remarks had mentioned about giving more teeth to the National Security Council Secretariat. I had the benefit and the privilege to have worked at the NSCS until 2020. And I'm sure, sir, you are aware that in 2019, the NSCS was included in the allocation of business rules. And while the charter doesn't actually detail the responsibilities of the NSCS, it is meant to assist the National Security Advisor who has been given a cabinet rank from a MOS rank with detail. He has also been given detailed official responsibilities as the principal security advisor to the Prime Minister and the National Security Council. So in that sense, it is effectively now working like any other government department or ministry. General Narayan also mentioned about a national security strategy. Whether we need to put one out or not is a matter of debate, possibly for another day. But I can, from the benefit of having been there, and I hope Chatham House rules are also applied here, that multiple discussions have taken place within on the broad contours of what should be the strategy. And there's been fairly a lot of deliberations, at least until I was there. What I think would be very important is a need for a division, I think, within the NSCS, under the NSA, headed by a Deputy National Security Advisor, that only looks at long-term assessments rather than firefighting. I think this is missing from my experiences in our system, and something that looks at just purely long-term without getting into the daily tactical operations. I think that will be very, very useful. Let me conclude by thanking every one of the eminent speakers and the chairs for taking time out to comprehensively detail their analysis on the topic of this conference. On behalf, of course, this is on behalf of all the organizers. I would also like to thank our fellow organizers, our fellow partners, the China Study Forum, in particular Shashi Nair sir and the PII RIND colleagues who've actually put together the entire physical infrastructure over the last 2 days. Commodore Vasan sir and the C3S colleagues who have actually pretty much controlled the time as well as the direction in which the deliberations have gone. Heblikar sir and his colleagues, Rebon Banerjee ma'am and the FNVA colleagues, and the National Maritime Foundation for coming together to organize the 2-day conference. And finally, of course, I thank the members of the audience present physically as well as online for their active participation. I cannot end without making a special mention as an acknowledgement of gratitude to Sri Krishan Verma sir, former Special Secretary, Cabinet Secretariat, for actually being the pioneer and bringing all of us together. We remember you today, sir, as we have hosted very successfully our first event. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your valuable views and summing up the conference proceedings in such a condensed yet comprehensive manner. And thank you for being a part of the event. Having said that, I now take refuge under this commonly used but most appropriate idiom: all good things must come to an end, and this 2-day conference is no exception. We hope that all the dignitaries and participants, especially the students, have found this to be a learning experience and are leaving with a better understanding of the issues discussed and with a hunger to know more. So with that, we conclude the two-day national conference organized by the China Study Forum in collaboration with the Rashtriya Raksha University and National Maritime University. And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You have been a wonderful audience. We look forward to hosting you at future events of the China Study Forum. Finally, before we disperse, I request everyone to stand up for the national anthem.
अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे